चलिए, so let me talk about the next reading that is related to risk management. So how can we manage the risk? And again, we have to talk about the corporate risk management. So we will try to do these two things. Okay. So one is the risk management. So what is risk management process? So when we talk from a corporate point of view, we have several kind of risk. So what happens with this risk management process? We first identify that how much risk an individual can take, how much risk a corporate can take.
Sir, sorry to break you on the between. This is the last part of portfolio management, correct?
So there are three things which are left. One is risk management, one is biases, so behavioral biases, and one is fintech. So all the topics are not linked at all. So we are just doing all these three things.
आज ही खत्म कर देंगे तीनों.
Let us see. How much we are able to complete. These are just theoretical chapters. There is nothing like to explain you the concepts basically. These are totally theoretical chapters, all the three chapters. Okay.
सर ये जो कंटेंट आप स्क्रीन पे प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं, ये इसमें मतलब कोई करेक्शन तो नहीं है ना, मतलब एराटा ये
नहीं जो ये रेड कलर में इसका मतलब ये फोकस्ड है, एंड दिस ग्रीन कलर में
उसके लिए नहीं पूछ रहा हूँ. मतलब अभी तक आपने वो जो भी कंटेंट प्रेजेंट किया है ना, वो सब मतलब क्लियर ही था ना, मतलब कुछ उसमें करेक्शन था ऐसा कुछ?
नहीं, ऐसा तो फिलहाल नहीं है.
ओके सर.
क्यों, क्या हुआ?
नहीं पूछ रहा हूँ, बस कंफर्म करना था.
नहीं ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. So risk manage again, but from preparation point of view, so these are just bulleted points. Are you getting my point? So what you have to do again, you should try to read the readings. So CFA curriculum आपको पढ़ना चाहिए, या कोई और रेफरेंस बुक आपने ली है तो उसको आपको रेफर करना चाहिए. ठीक है. These are just bulleted points. You can see, you can say. So for example, there is an organization, there can be different several kind of risk. So for example, let us say business risk is there, operational risk is there, financial risk is there, regulatory risk is there. So there can be different kind of risk. So what happens in this risk management process? So first we identify that what is the risk tolerance level of the organization, how much risk an organization can take. Then we measure the risk, and then we try to modify or monitor these risks. So this is risk management process. Now if we talk about this risk management process, it doesn't mean that we are trying to eliminate the risk, because business means risk only, taking risk only. So it doesn't mean that we are trying to minimize or eliminate all the risk, but what we are trying to do, we are trying to manage it in such a manner so that there is no problem in the sustainability of the business. So that is the main purpose of risk management process. Are you getting the point? An organization with a strong competitive position, so they recover quickly, they recover from the losses easily, in comparison to a organization which is having weak competitive position. So therefore an organization's risk tolerance should reflect in its competitive position. So definitely, if there is an organization which is a business leader, let us say there is a company which is market leader, and let us say some problem comes to the economy, so there are more chances that this company will come out of the problem more quickly in comparison to those companies which are the smaller one, because there what happens, they recover quickly from that kind of risk. जो छोटी कंपनीज हैं उनको टाइम लगता है उस रिस्क से बाहर आने के लिए. Okay, now, so again you can just read. So what are the features of a risk management? So the whole framework is what? First, we establish the processes and policies for risk governance. It means we create policies, okay, how we have to govern the risk. Then we determine what is the risk tolerance level of the organization. Then we identify and measure the risk. Then we try to manage the risk and mitigate risk. It means we try to minimize the risk. कैसे कम करें, उस रिस्क को कम करने की कोशिश करते हैं. Then again, we monitor the risk over time. It means it is not one time process. We continue to monitor the risk. Then communicating across the organization. So whatsoever risks are there, so accordingly the top management will communicate every department, okay, you can take this much risk, you can in your operations you can take this much risk. For example, there is a if we talk about finance department, so management will decide, okay, more and more funds should be from equity, not from debt, because if we take more and more debt, it means the firm is at more risk, and overall risk of the organization, the overall level of the risk of the organization is this much, so we should use more equity, not debt. So it means we communicate, the top management communicate it across the organization, and then we perform strategic risk analysis. So this is a comprehensive framework, risk management framework. So here what we have, we know what are the management, what are the organization goals, how much maximum risk organization can take. So accordingly, we try to allocate the risk to the different assets. That, okay, from this asset, maximum risk which can be taken from this asset is this much. From this process, maximum risk can be taken this much from this particular process. So in this manner, the whole risk management framework works. I hope the point is clear. Is it fine? Harsh, is it fine?
Yes, sir.
Siddhi, is it fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as I said, these are just theoretical chapters. There is no as such concept. So we can just read the things even. So what is risk governance? So again, risk governance, it is senior management's determination of risk tolerance. It means senior management decide that how much risk we can take. They decide what is the optimal risk exposure strategy, how much exposure we can take, we should take. And they decide upon the framework. So this is the top management decision, basically we can say. So risk governance come from the board of directors. So this is a top-down approach. So top management decide, they provide the guidance. They say, okay, you have to take this much risk. This particular process should have this much risk. How the activities to be aligned so that the organizational goals are achieved, so that the risk, so that company is operating, organization is operating at the maximum, at maximum level of that risk which company can take. जितना company maximum risk ले सकती है, तो maximum उसी risk के ऊपर operate कर सके. तो ये पूरी की पूरी process क्या है? Top down approach है. So to attain the best results, risk governance should be an enterprise-wide view of risk. It means we should talk from the whole firm point of view. Okay, from the whole firm point of view, we can take this much risk. So for example, we have this division, this division, this division, we have different business segments. So these all segments will have different risk. Yes. So we should talk from the whole firm point of view. Okay, from the whole firm point of view, how much maximum risk we can take on. Then accordingly, what I should do, I should allocate it to the different assets basically. Just a minute. Is it done? So risk is allocated to all the assets. Okay, this particular division or segment can take this much maximum risk. This division can take this much maximum risk. So this kind of thing. So there is a risk management committee that can provide a way for various part of the organization to bring up the issues of risk management, integration of risk, and best ways to mitigate undesirable risk. Is this point clear?
Yes, sir.
Siddhi, is it fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now. So again, what is risk tolerance? It means again, we know it is the maximum risk which organization can take to pursue its goals. And it is determined by the top management. So top management decide, okay, which risks are acceptable. It means we will accept that risk. There is no issue. So we are not, for example, required to take any insurance. See, either we keep the risk with us, or what we do, we try to mitigate it, or what we do, we try to transfer it to any other party. So when we talk about taking insurance, so taking insurance is just like transferring the risk to the other parties. So what we have to pick, what we have to adopt, so that is something which we are talking about. So please just read it. I hope this is fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So again, please just read it. We have already discussed it. Please read it. So what happens? We allocate the risk to the different assets. As I said, for example, there are different departments. So overall risk is this. So accordingly, risk is allocated to different assets, to different processes. So that is called as risk budgeting. Please. Is it fine?
Yes, sir.
Now there are different type of risk. So there can be financial risk, there can be non-financial risk. So financial risk include credit risk. What do we mean by credit risk? It means uncertainty whether the other party, the counterparty, will honor the transaction or not. So that is credit risk. Liquidity risk. It means, for example, what happens when we are trying to sell any asset, but we are not able to sell it at the fair value. So that is what? That is liquidity risk. It means my asset is not liquid enough, and that is why whatsoever is the fair value, I am not able to get the fair value of it. So that is liquidity risk. Then market risk. There can be, you can say, market risk. It means there can be changes in the inflation, interest rates. Again, if we talk about the foreign exchange rate, so there can be that kind of risk. So that is market risk. It means this risk is beyond the control of what? Organization. There can be non-financial risk as well. So we can have operational risk. Yes. So it means if we talk about the process, there is some fault in the organization process. So there is inadequate security. For example, there are some business interruptions. So for example, a strike happens. So that kind of, or for example, let us say what is happening due to any, you can say, lockdown or that kind of thing happens. So these all risks are basically what? Operational risk. So solvency risk, it means company, as the name says, company is on the verge of becoming insolvent. So company do not have sufficient cash to pay its liabilities. So that is solvency risk. Regulatory risk, it means regulations, government has changed the regulatory requirement. So it means now there is more costing to the organization. So what happens? So there is a regulatory risk for them. So for example, let us say if we talk about if we talk about you can say hotel business in Delhi. Okay, hotel businesses in Delhi. So what happens after certain time period? Some new policy comes for the hotel business. Okay, you should have this, you should have this, you should have this. So that kind of new policies comes. So what this, so because the regulations are changed, so it is a cost to the organization. So if businesses are big, so they can cope up with these kind of cost, these kind of regulatory changes. But if we talk about the small businesses, so ultimately they face a lot of problem, and consequently what happens, many businesses shut down. So that is regulatory risk. Government or political risk. So for example, tax rate. So we are operating in an industry, and for example, what government has done, government has increased the taxes. Okay, so government has increased the taxes on the raw material, or government has increased the taxes on the final product. So that kind of thing. So these kind of risks are also there. Yes. Now legal risk. So there might be a possibility that organization will have exposure to some legal proceedings in future. So that is legal risk. Model risk, it means when we are doing the valuation, when we are finding out the valuation, so ultimately there is some problem in the valuation model, and that is called what? That is model risk. Tail risk, it means extreme events. It means some very extreme event happens, which is beyond thinking, you can say. So that kind of risk can also be there. Yes, so that kind of risk is this tail risk. For example, if we talk about, I hope you must have heard about, there were some protests on the Delhi borders for last 1.5 years, and they were called so-called farmer protests. Okay, have you heard about it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So what happened because of that? So there are a lot of businesses, lot of, you can say, big factories, big businesses which are on the borders. It means if we talk about Delhi, so we have Haryana on border, we have Uttar Pradesh on border. So we have many businesses. So what happened? So it means because there were protests, so ultimately a lot of businesses, a lot of factories which were, you can say, very profitable once a time, so they shut down because protesters were sitting here. So raw material cannot come, labor cannot come, and final product cannot move, so nothing can happen. So ultimately these industries got closed. So no one even thought about it that that might be a problem. So that kind of risk, extreme event risk, is basically tail risk. Accounting risk, again the risk related to accounting. So accounting policies and estimates are incorrect. For example, we believe that okay, this particular asset will continue, this particular fixed asset can be used for 10 years, but what happens, this fixed asset became obsolete after 5 years only, and now what is the problem? So we estimated that it will work for 10 years, but now it is 5 years, so it create problem. So that kind of risk is accounting risk. So we are adopting some wrong policies, wrong practices related to accounting, so that is accounting risk. Harsh and Siddhi, is it fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
No. Now let we talk about the other risk. In individual case, there can be again two type of risk. One is death risk of death, and one is longevity risk. It means living longer than anticipated. तो लॉजिकली मुझे बताइए, चलो अगर जल्दी डेथ हो जाती है तो वो रिस्क एक समझ आता है, लेकिन ज्यादा लंबे टाइम तक जिएंगे तो क्या वो रिस्क है? इज इट रिस्क?
नो सर।
लेकिन यहां तो लिखा है यस रिस्क है. सी, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, यू डिड योर फाइनेंशियल प्लानिंग, or anyone did his or her financial planning, for which age? Let us say they planned it for
70.
70, age of 70. Okay, they planned it till 70. It means they planned that okay, we will live till 70, so let us do the planning accordingly. Okay, now what happens? So funds are created according to that. Yes, funds are created according to that. If that person lives after 70, then from where the money will come to sustain the life? It will become very problematic for him or her now. So that is longevity risk. See, it seems that dying too early is a risk, but living too long is more riskier than this mortality risk. क्योंकि देखो डेथ आ गई तो बात खत्म, दैट्स इट. लेकिन ज्यादा जी गए तो प्रॉब्लम है ना. आज के लॉजिकली सोचिए, आज के टाइम पर ही सब न्यूक्लियर फैमिलीज का कंसेप्ट आ गया. कोई एक दूसरे को देखकर अगर हम बात करते हैं, नो वन इज हैप्पी, एज सिंपल एज दैट. कोई किसी के साथ रहना नहीं चाहता, सब हर किसी को न्यूक्लियर फैमिली चाहिए, ये हमारा अपना, दैट्स इट. ठीक है, जब आज हमारी ऐसी सोच है तो लॉजिकली सोचिए आज से 30-35 इयर्स के बाद और क्या सोच होगी? फिर तो हम लोग पूरा वेस्टर्न कल्चर और ज्यादा आ जाएगा हिंदुस्तान के अंदर. फिर तो क्या होगा? फिर तो 16 साल की उम्र में बच्चे बोलेंगे कि आपका और हमारा यहीं तक था, टाटा बाय बाय, आपकी जिंदगी आपकी, हमारी जिंदगी हमारी. ऐसा ही होता है, ऐसा ही होता है. तो तब तक तो तब हो जाएगा. तो उस टाइम पर कैसे चलेगी गाड़ी, कैसे चलेगी? तो जो हमने फंड्स क्रिएट किया उसी से चलेगी, और अगर वो फंड्स खत्म हो गए तो प्रॉब्लम है. सो इट मींस इट इज मोर रिस्की देन द मोर्टेलिटी रिस्क. आर यू गेटिंग माय पॉइंट? सो मोर्टेलिटी रिस्क मींस डाइंग टू अर्ली. सो इफ एनीवन डाई टू अर्ली and that person is the earning member, so what is the problem? The problem is that what will happen to the survivors? So those people who were dependent, so what will happen to them? So there will be a lot of problem with them. So that is what? That is mortality risk. And this risk is certain. This risk is certain. Okay, the only certainty in life is death. This is the only certainty of the life. Okay, so I hope this point is clear.
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
So now there are different measures. So you have already done them. So you know what is standard deviation. It is a measure of total risk. So you have done the skewness, kurtosis. Okay, then you know what is beta. Duration, this concept will come in detail. So when we talk about the sensitivity of bond prices with the changes in interest rate, so there is a concept called duration. So in the fixed income, tomorrow we are going to do it in very detailed duration. And derivatives also is done with you. So you know what is delta, gamma, vega, rho. Do you know them? I hope you guys have done it. Yes. सिद्धि
सर डेरिवेटिव रिस्क वाला थोड़ा वापस करवा दो ना.
इसमें सिर्फ ये है कि स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन और बीटा क्लियर होता है.
यस सर.
ठीक, तो डेल्टा क्या है? It means if we talk about the underlying asset में change होता है. So Reliance shares and Reliance futures. So इसमें change होने से इसमें कितना change आता है? So that is delta. Sensitivity. इसमें change होने से इसका क्या effect यहाँ पर आता है on an average? इसमें 1% का चेंज होता है तो जनरली फ्यूचर्स में रिलायंस फ्यूचर्स में कितना परसेंट का चेंज होगा? दैट इज कॉल्ड डेल्टा.
इट्स जस्ट लाइक बीटा,
यू कैन से. ओके. गामा, दिस इज द सेंसिटिविटी ऑफ द डेल्टा टू चेंजेस इन द प्राइस ऑफ, सो व्हाटसोएवर डेल्टा वी हैव मेजर्ड, so at different point we measure the delta. So with changes in the share prices underlying asset, how this delta also changes? How this delta also changes? So that is called gamma. Okay, now Vega. This is the sensitivity of derivative values to the volatility according to the volatility. So if volatility is high, then what is the impact on the derivative values? If volatility is low, then what is the impact on the derivative prices? So that is Vega. And Rho establishes a relationship between the change in the derivative prices with risk-free rate. So if risk-free rate changes, so how there is an impact in the derivative prices? So this is called Rho. Is this point clear, Harsh?
yes sir.
Yes. Okay. Now, again, we can have, so value at risk. So first tail risk, as we discussed, extreme event, extreme outcomes. So that kind of risk is tail risk. Commonly used measures for tail risk is value at risk and the conditional value at risk. So how can we measure the tail risk? Tail risk is the risk of the extreme events. Yes. So how do we measure it? So value at risk. It is the, if we talk about the normal days. So what is the minimum loss expected over a period with a specific probability? So that is what risk. It means how much value is at risk. तो जो risk रहेगा ही रहेगा. Now, after that risk, there is some additional risk. So because of that risk, how much will be the loss in the expected value? So that is what conditional VAR, conditional VAR. So for example, जो रहेगा risk, नीचे जाने का risk रहेगा, तो पहले हमारा जो risk measure कर रहे हैं, that is VAR. फिर ये तो रहेगा, इसके बाद इस रिस्क के बाद और रिस्क है बिजनेस के अंदर, तो उसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? कंडीशनल VAR. Now, two methods of risk assessment that are used to supplement measures such as VAR and COVAR, this CVAR. So there are two more things, two or testings we can say, which we use with the VAR and conditional VAR. So one is stress testing, one is scenario analysis. So in this case, what happens? We change a specific, you can say, variable. We change a specific variable and we see what is the outcome, what is the change in the outcome. So for example, let I give you a small example. Let I say that your time period of investment horizon is 5 years. Your rate of interest is 10%. Your investment amount is, for example, 1,000. I say calculate future value. So these are the inputs. These are the inputs. So if I change any one variable, key variable, all these three variables in this case are key one. So let I change this variable. I simply change this variable and see what is the impact on the output. So that is called stress testing. If I do permutation combination and I do change this also, this also, this also, I keep this as constant, change only this, I keep these two as constant and change only this. So it means we are creating different, you can say, permutation combinations where we are changing all the variables simultaneously. So we are changing multiple inputs and then we are looking at the output. So that is called scenario analysis. That is called scenario analysis. Harsh and Siddhi, is it fine?
सर सिनेरियो एनालिसिस फिर से करवाए ना.
देखिए हम क्या करते हैं, उसके अंदर जो भी हमारे सिनेरियोस के ऊपर बेस था. फॉर एग्जांपल आपने क्या किया है, वैल्यूएशन की है, इक्विटी का किया है आपने थोड़ा बहुत, उसमें आपने पढ़ा होगा फ्री कैश फ्लो टू फॉर्म होता है, फिर हम उसको टर्मिनल वैल्यू निकालते हैं, डिस्काउंटिंग रेट वैक होता है, ये सब कुछ किया है थोड़ा बहुत.
यस सर.
ठीक है, तो मैंने क्या किया, मेरा वैक भी है, मेरी ग्रोथ रेट के ऊपर भी डिपेंड करती है वैल्यूएशन. ठीक है, और मान लीजिए किसी और फैक्टर के ऊपर भी डिपेंड करती है. तो मैं क्या कर रहा हूं, इन सब फैक्टर्स को अलग अलग चेंज करके देख रहा हूं कि इन सभी फैक्टर्स में अगर मैं चेंज करता हूं तो वैल्यूएशन पे क्या फर्क आता है. अगर मैं किसी एक ही इनपुट में चेंज करके आउटपुट पर इंपैक्ट देखता हूं तो उसको हम बोल रहे हैं स्ट्रेस टेस्टिंग. अगर हम अलग अलग मल्टीपल्स के अंदर चेंज है, उन सबको अलग अलग चेंज कर करके देखते हैं तो उसको हम बोलते हैं सिनेरियो एनालिसिस. इज इट फाइन?
यस सर.
Now, so you can just read it. So an organization may either to decide bear risk, so that is called self insurance. So organization is saying, okay, this risk is not very big risk for the organization, so what we do, let we try to keep it and let we try to prevent it. It means let we take some steps so that this risk doesn't happen. Okay, so for example, we are doing diversification. Okay, so that kind of thing we are doing. So that is self-insurance. Or what they can do, they can just transfer that risk. It means they can go with some insurance arrangement and they can just shift that risk. So what they can do, for example, they can even buy surety bond. In surety bond, what happens, an insurance company says, okay, if the party default, if the other party, third party fails to make the payment, then we will pay you. So that is surety bond. And again, we can have fidelity bonds from the insurance companies. What they say, okay, if there is any misconduct, there is any theft from the employee side, so ultimately we will pay you. So that are called fidelity bonds. That are called what? That are called fidelity bonds. Is it fine? And again, what we can do, what is risk shifting? So it means we are just is a way to change the distribution of possible outcomes. So for example, we are using derivative contracts. So for example, I am an importer and I am expecting that when I will have to make payment in future, so there is a possibility that my home country currency depreciates. So then it means I have to make more payment in future if I have to make payment in foreign currency terms in future. So what I do, let I buy a derivative contract so that that kind of risk is mitigated. So that is basically risk shifting. Is this point clear?
Yes sir.
Siddhi, is it fine?
Yes, sir.
So please try all these questions. Is it done?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So please just check your answer.
सेकंड वाला रॉन्ग हो गया सर.
सिद्धि आपका?
Yes, sir. Second वाला मैंने B लिखा था.
A risk management framework least likely includes. देखिए बी में तो जो तीनों चीजें हैं वो तो आती हैं रिस्क मैनेजमेंट प्रोसेस में.
अच्छा,
Establishing.
that is least likely. Okay, ठीक है, समझ गया. Mistake.
Establishing position limits ये तो देखते नहीं हैं. So C is the correct answer for this. I hope it is clear. Harsh, is it fine?
Yes, sir.